Hi there, welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're stepping into the dimly lit alleyways of medieval Europe, where the scent of cheap ale mingles with rosewater perfume, and where the sound of lutes competes with rather more intimate noises drifting from upper windows. You're about to discover that medieval brothels weren't just seedy backroom operations. They were legitimate businesses with licenses, health inspectors, and even customer complaint departments. Though let's be honest, if you found yourself in one back then, customer satisfaction was probably the least of your worries. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Drop it in the comments below. Now, close your eyes and listen. You're walking through the narrow streets of medieval London in 1385, and despite what Hollywood might have you believe, you don't need to search some sketchy back alley to find a brothel. They're right there on the main thoroughfares, marked by distinctive signs, a cardinal's hat here, a swan there, names that would make a modern marketing team blush with their lack of subtlety. The boar's head, the cardinal's hat, the swan. These aren't just colourful pub names. They're officially licensed brothels operating under the watchful eye of the Bishop of Winchester. Yes, you heard that correctly. The church, that bastion of moral authority, is your landlord in this particular sin business. The Winchester geese, as the prostitutes are called, work in the liberty of the Clink, conveniently located just across the Thames from the city of London proper. It's a legal loophole, so brazen it makes modern tax havens look amateur, technically outside London's jurisdiction, but close enough for a quick boat ride when the urge strikes. You push open the heavy wooden door of the Rose, and immediately the warmth hits you, not just from the roaring fireplace, but from the press of bodies, the thick air heavy with wood smoke, spilled wine, and that peculiar medieval cocktail of unwashed humanity mixed with aggressive attempts at perfuming. The madam, a formidable woman in her 40s wearing more keys than a jailer, sizes you up with the efficiency of a merchant appraising goods. She's a businesswoman, licensed by the bishop himself, paying her rents quarterly just like any other tenant. The great hall sprawls before you, part tavern, part waiting room, part performance space. Musicians saw away at their instruments while acrobats tumble between the tables. It's entertainment with a purpose. Keep the customers drinking, keep them spending. Keep them in a mood to purchase the primary product on offer. A young woman catches your eye, her hair dyed an alarming shade of yellow with saffron and sulphur, the law demanding she mark herself as a common woman through her appearance. What strikes you most isn't the debauchery, it's the bureaucracy. That woman's yellow hair, mandated by city ordinance, the red hood hanging by the door, required wearing for any prostitute venturing onto public streets, the ledger the madam guards more carefully than her strongbox. It records every transaction, every girl's earnings, every penny of tax owed to both church and crown. Medieval prostitution operates less like an underground vice and more like a guild, complete with regulations, quality standards, and fierce protection of territorial rights. You notice a city official in the corner, not partaking but observing, making notes. He's one of the surveyors of the stews, appointed to ensure no married women work here, no nuns have gone astray, no weapons are hidden in the bedchambers. There are rules about feast days when the brothels must close, rules about serving food, rules about how long a customer can stay. The medieval world loves its regulations, and nowhere is this more apparent than in its careful management of mankind's oldest profession. The official finishes his inspection and nods to the madam before departing, leaving you to wonder at this strange dance between sin and sanctity. The Bishop of Winchester, whose palace sits just a stone's throw away, collects roughly £20 yearly from each brothel, a fortune in an age when a skilled craftsman might earn 6 pence daily. The theological gymnastics required to justify this arrangement would make a Renaissance philosopher dizzy. Yet here you stand in Christianity's most profitable paradox. You overhear two merchants at the next table discussing the bishop's latest rent increase. 20 marks now, one grumbles into his ale. And that's not counting the gifts at Christmas and Easter. The irony isn't lost on anyone. The same church that preaches chastity from its pulpits counts coins earned from its brothel properties in its vestries. Some historians still argue whether this was pure hypocrisy or a pragmatic attempt at harm reduction, containing vice within controllable boundaries rather than letting it run wild through the streets. The madam, noticing your interest in the conversation, leans close enough that you smell her breath, wine mixed with cloves, an expensive habit. The good bishop, she says with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes, believes it's better to profit from inevitable sin than let it profit the devil alone. It's a neat bit of logic, attributed to St. Augustine himself, though you suspect the saint might have had second thoughts if he'd seen his philosophy applied to real estate ventures. A priest enters through the main door, and nobody bats an eye. He's not here for the obvious, at least not openly. Instead, he approaches the madam with a leather purse, collecting the church's weekly due. The Winchester brothels operate under something called customary law, a beautiful medieval invention that lets you do almost anything if you can claim it's been done that way for time immemorial. The bishop's predecessors have collected brothel rents for over 2 centuries, making it practically a sacred tradition. You watch the priest count coins with practiced efficiency, marking each amount in his ledger. The hypocrisy should be staggering, but medieval minds compartmentalize brilliantly. The same church that manages these properties also runs the Magdalene hospitals, where reformed prostitutes can seek shelter and redemption. It's a complete ecosystem: sin, profit, punishment, and absolution, all under one ecclesiastical umbrella. The arrangement extends beyond mere rent collection. The bishop's court handles disputes between brothel keepers, enforces contracts, and even mediates customer complaints. You're essentially in church-sponsored vice, complete with ecclesiastical quality control. When a patron feels cheated or a working girl claims assault, it's the bishop's bailiff who investigates, the bishop's court that judges, the bishop's prison, the infamous clink, that houses the guilty. A young woman approaches your table, and you notice the small lead badge pinned to her dress, another bishop's innovation, licensing individual workers like fishmongers or blacksmiths. She's maybe 17, with that practiced smile that doesn't quite hide the calculation in her eyes. The bishop's wine is watered, she says. A coded phrase you've learned means she's fully licensed and disease-free, at least according to last month's inspection. The church's involvement extends even to this intimate level, creating a bizarre system where proving your moral cleanliness to work in a brothel requires a certificate from the same institution that condemns fornication. The theological justification gets even more creative when you dig deeper. Medieval churchmen cite everyone from the Old Testament's Rahab to Mary Magdalene herself, arguing that God works through imperfect vessels. They quote Thomas Aquinas's grudging admission that prostitution, like sewers, serves an ugly but necessary function in urban life. Remove it, and the whole city becomes polluted. Better to channel the filth through regulated channels, channels that happen to flow directly through church coffers. You learn that some bishops take their cut in kind rather than coin, maintaining private chambers in their managed properties. Others sublease to secular operators while maintaining plausible deniability. The Bishop of Winchester's London operations are just the tip of the iceberg. Church-owned brothels operate in Avignon, Vienna, Cologne, anywhere ecclesiastical authorities control significant urban property. It's international holy vice, a franchise operation centuries before McDonald's. The girl with the lead badge has moved on to other customers, leaving you to explore deeper into this establishment that can't quite decide what it wants to be. You push through a beaded curtain into what appears to be a bathing room, where the line between hygiene and hedonism blurs beyond recognition. 3 large wooden tubs dominate the space, each big enough for 4 people, filled with steaming water that smells of lavender and something medicinal, perhaps artemisia, which the bathhouse keepers swear prevents the French pox. You're witnessing one of medieval Europe's greatest social deceptions, the public bathhouse that's definitely, absolutely, certainly not a brothel, despite all evidence to the contrary. These stews, as Londoners call them, maintain the thinnest veneer of respectability. After all, cleanliness is next to godliness, even if that cleanliness involves naked strangers sharing herb-infused water, while musicians play suggestive songs from behind strategically placed screens. A bathhouse attendant, wearing marginally more clothing than the bathers, approaches with a menu of services. "Would Sir prefer the full treatment?" she asks. And you realize this could mean anything from an actual bath to activities that would make a sailor blush. The price list she shows you is illuminating. A simple bath costs 2 pence, but add assistance with washing, and it jumps to 6, while the complete restoration of bodily humours runs a full shilling. The euphemisms are paper thin, but they allow everyone to pretend this is about health, not pleasure. You settle into one of the smaller tubs and immediately understand the appeal. In an age when most people bathe perhaps twice a year, these heated pools offer luxury beyond imagination. The water is changed, well, allegedly changed, every few days, though you try not to think too hard about what's been happening in it. An attendant brings you watered wine and small cakes, creating an atmosphere somewhere between spa and speakeasy. The mixing of legitimate bathing with prostitution creates constant confusion, sometimes deliberately cultivated. Respectable merchants' wives visit certain bathhouses on specific mornings for actual bathing, while the same facilities transform into something quite different come evening. Some establishments try to maintain strict separation, bath only, no funny business, but they're fighting a losing battle against both human nature and economic pressure. Why charge 2 pence for a bath when you can charge a shilling for a bath with benefits? You notice small private chambers around the main bathing area, their doors decorated with painted scenes that leave little to imagination. Venus and Mars in various compromising positions, Leda and her remarkably anatomically detailed swan. These sweating rooms serve triple duty as steam baths, private dining chambers, and exactly what you'd expect. The furniture inside, you're told, is specially designed to be versatile, which explains why that bench has so many inexplicable handholds. The bathhouse tradition stretches back to Roman times, but medieval entrepreneurs have perfected the art of plausible deniability. Official documents always refer to these places as bathhouses or hothouses, never brothels. Maintaining a legal fiction everyone acknowledges but nobody states. City regulations focus obsessively on water temperature, soap quality, and towel cleanliness, studiously ignoring what happens between the washing and the drying. A fight breaks out near the main pool, two men arguing over a woman who's apparently promised her exclusive attention to both. The bathhouse enforcer, a mountain of a man who doubles as furnace stoker, separates them with practiced efficiency. "Gentlemen," he rumbles, "this is a place of healing waters, not brawling." The irony of maintaining peace in a brothel disguised as a health facility isn't lost on anyone, but the pretense must be maintained. You learn that some bathhouses operate on a membership basis, selling annual passes to wealthy merchants who appreciate discretion. Others cater to specific clientele. There's one near the Inns of Court favoured by lawyers, another by the docks popular with sailors fresh from months at sea. The specialisation extends to services offered. Some bathhouses employ women skilled in massage techniques from the East. Others pride themselves on their medicinal herb knowledge, claiming their waters can cure everything from gout to melancholy, though most customers seem more interested in temporary relief than permanent cures. Steam rises from your skin as you leave the bathing chamber, and immediately you spot her, a woman in a striped hood that might as well be a neon sign announcing her profession. The sumptuary laws, those medieval attempts at social control through fashion, hit prostitutes particularly hard. In London, it's the striped hood. In Venice, you'd see yellow scarves. In Florence, bells sewn onto sleeves that jingle with every movement. Medieval authorities want their sex workers visible, marked, categorized like cattle at market. You follow this living warning sign through the streets, curious about how these laws play out in daily life. She walks with practiced confidence, ignoring the stares and occasional jeers. Her striped hood is made of good wool. Ironic that the law forcing her to mark herself as a social outcast also requires her to spend money on quality fabric. Cheap dye won't hold the stripes properly, she explains when you catch up, and the city inspectors find women whose identifying marks have faded. The regulations seem designed by someone with a particularly cruel sense of humour. In some German cities, prostitutes must wear coats with one sleeve yellow, the other green. Try finding that combination at your local tailor. In Avignon, they're required to wear a red knot on their left shoulder, precisely 4 fingers in width. Too small, that's a fine. Too large, also a fine. Wore it on the right shoulder by mistake. Hope you enjoyed your breakfast, because you're spending the day in the stocks. You duck into a tavern with her. She needs wine to warm up, and you're fascinated by this walking legal paradox. She tells you about the time she forgot her striped hood at home and tried to slip through the market quickly. The fine was 2 weeks' earnings. Another woman she knows was pilloried for wearing a fur-lined cloak, a luxury reserved for respectable merchants' wives. The fur was rabbit, barely worth mentioning, but the law makes no distinctions. The truly perverse part is how these marking laws create a twisted economy. Certain tailors specialize in prostitutes' mandatory garments, charging premium prices because where else can these women shop? Some enterprising madams keep spare hoods and badges to rent to new girls who can't afford their own. You can apparently make good money selling second-hand shame markers, provided you don't ask too many questions about why the previous owner no longer needs them. Historians still argue whether these laws were meant to protect or punish. The official reasoning claims it's for public safety. Respectable women need protection from being mistaken for prostitutes, and honest men should know what they're purchasing. But watching this woman navigate the street, dodging both lustful grabs and disgusted spittle, you suspect the real purpose is public humiliation, a walking reminder of the wages of sin. The laws get even more bizarre when you dig into the details. In Augsburg, prostitutes can't wear veils, presumably because hiding their faces would defeat the purpose of public marking. But they also can't go bareheaded like peasants. Their uncovered hair must be braided in a specific pattern that takes an hour each morning to achieve. In Paris, they're forbidden from wearing silver buckles, pointed shoes, or any dress that trails on the ground. One city ordinance spends 3 paragraphs defining exactly how much cleavage is too much for a prostitute to display, which seems rather like regulating how wet water can be. Your companion points out a woman across the tavern wearing an embroidered belt, definitely illegal for her profession. She'll claim she's a seamstress if questioned. Your guide explains, "We all have cover stories. I'm a laundress, officially. Even carry dirty linen sometimes to make it believable." The cat and mouse game between working women and city authorities creates an entire underground economy of false identities, forged work permits, and strategic costume changes. The enforcement varies wildly depending on who's watching and who's being watched. A beautiful young courtesan with wealthy protectors might float through the city in silks and jewels, technically violating every sumptuary law on the books. Meanwhile, an aging streetwalker gets 3 days in the pillory for adding ribbon trim to her regulation hood. Justice, medieval style, has excellent vision for the poor and convenient blindness for the profitable. Your striped hooded companion departs with a sardonic curtsy, leaving you to wander back toward the brothel district as evening falls. You're drawn to the Cardinal's Hat, reputedly the most successful establishment in Southwark, to understand the economics driving this whole industry. The madam here, Marjorie Swanson, is legendary. They say she owns property worth more than most knights and keeps 3 clerks busy managing her accounts. You find Marjorie in what can only be called her office, a room that would make a Venetian merchant envious. Ledgers line the walls, and she's bent over calculations with an intensity that suggests this is no simple tavern operation. She looks up, assesses you're not a customer, but someone interested in the business itself. And surprisingly, she indulges your curiosity. "People think we just open our doors and coin flows in," she says, gesturing at her books. "They have no idea what it costs to run a proper house. The startup expenses alone would bankrupt most craftsmen. First, there's the license, officially called a tenant's agreement with the bishop, but everyone knows what it really is. That's 40 shillings annually, paid quarterly without fail. Then comes the building itself. A proper brothel needs at least 8 rooms, a common area, kitchens, and those expensive private chambers. Marjorie inherited hers, but she knows madams who spent 10 years saving to afford a suitable property. "Look at this," she says, showing you a bill. "New mattresses, £40. You can't use straw tick here. Customers expect feather beds, and they need replacing every season for obvious reasons. The laundry bill alone runs 3 shillings weekly. Sheets, towels, the girls' working clothes. Everything needs constant washing, and not by amateur hands." She employs 4 full-time laundresses who know to keep their mouths shut about what they're scrubbing out. The protection money is where things get truly expensive, officially. The bishop's men provide security, but Marjorie pays additional fees to various city officials to look the other way when minor regulations get bent. There's the sergeant who patrols this street, the inspector who checks the licenses, the summoner who might otherwise drag girls to ecclesiastical court. I budget 10% of gross income for greasing palms, she admits, 20% in election years. Then there's the staff beyond the obvious. 2 doormen built like cathedral doors, because drunk customers and desperate women make a volatile mix. A cook who provides decent meals. Hungry men spend less, and the girls need sustenance for their work. Musicians for atmosphere, servants for cleaning. Even a barber surgeon on retainer for monthly health inspections and the inevitable injuries. Last month alone, Marjorie sighs, I spent more on mercury treatments than most people see in a year. The working girls themselves operate under various arrangements. Some are true independents who rent rooms nightly, keeping whatever they earn minus the house cut, usually 40%. Others work on straight commission, with the house providing room, board, and clothing in exchange for 60% of earnings. The newest girls often start indebted, having borrowed money for decent clothes and their mandatory markers, working months just to break even. Marjorie shows you her price list, carefully graduated like any guild's fee structure. A quick tumble in a common room costs 4p, barely profitable after expenses. An hour in a private chamber runs a shilling, while an entire night with one of her premium girls commands a full crown. But here's what novices don't understand, she explains. The real money isn't in the bed sport. It's in everything around it. She breaks down the auxiliary income streams with obvious pride. Alcohol sales generate 40% of profits. Men drink before for courage, during for stamina, after for forgetting. Food service adds another 15%. Then there's gambling in the main hall, the cut from musicians' tips, even charging admission on busy nights just to enter the establishment. Some madams run loan services on the side, advancing money to desperate customers at rates that would make Jewish moneylenders blush. A smart madam, Marjorie concludes. Closing her ledger, thinks like any merchant. Diversify income, minimize risk, keep excellent records. The bishop's taxmen audit twice yearly, and God help you if your numbers don't match. You leave her office with new respect for these businesswomen navigating between sin and commerce, managing enterprises that would challenge any guild master. The next morning finds you in perhaps the most disturbing corner of the medieval sex trade, the monthly health inspection at St. Thomas's Hospital. The line of women waiting outside the examination room stretches into the courtyard, each clutching the lead badge that proves their legal status. You've convinced the examining surgeon, Master Wilhelm, that you're a visiting physician interested in public health measures, and he's disgustingly eager to share his expertise. The miasma of Venus, Wilhelm declares, ushering you into his chamber of medical horrors, spreads through the mingling of corrupt humours. We must be vigilant. His examination room looks like a torture chamber had a baby with an apothecary shop. Gleaming metal instruments of unclear purpose line one wall, while shelves groan under jars filled with substances you'd rather not identify. The smell alone, sulphur, mercury, and something distinctly rotting, makes your breakfast reconsider its commitment to staying down. The first woman enters, and you immediately want to leave. Wilhelm's examination involves prodding with cold metal tools while asking invasive questions about her monthly flows, recent customers, and any unusual discharges. She bears it with stoic resignation. This monthly humiliation is the price of her legal badge. Wilhelm finds what he calls suspicious inflammation and prescribes his standard treatment, mercury fumigation. You watch in horror as he sets up the fumigation chair, a wooden contraption that belongs in an inquisitor's dungeon. The woman sits naked while Wilhelm lights a brazier beneath her, adding mercury compounds that release toxic fumes. She's meant to breathe these vapors while they also, theoretically, cleanse her nether regions. 20 minutes minimum, Wilhelm instructs, ignoring her coughs. The poison must reach all corrupted tissue. The fact that mercury is poison to everything, corrupted or not, seems lost on medieval medical theory. The treatments get worse. For women showing actual symptoms of what might be early syphilis, though the disease won't be properly identified for decades, Wilhelm prescribes a regime that sounds like elaborate torture. Daily mercury ointments that burn skin raw, bloodletting from specific veins thought connected to the genitals, purgatives so violent that women soil themselves in the streets walking home. We must expel the corruption, Wilhelm explains, while you wonder how anyone survives the cure, let alone the disease. Some women try to cheat the system with folk remedies that range from useless to lethal. You hear whispered conversations about herbal pessaries made from ground beetles, douches of white wine mixed with crow's blood, even charms involving dead men's teeth worn in specific anatomical locations. One woman swears by sitting over burning feathers from a black cockerel killed at midnight. Wilhelm dismisses these as ignorant superstition, while prescribing treatments based on planetary alignments and the color of urine held up to candlelight. The medical establishment's understanding of sexually transmitted diseases remains medievally creative. Some physicians blame excessive female heat that literally cooks male seed into poison. Others cite astrological influences. Apparently, Venus in retrograde is terrible for genital health. Wilhelm personally believes prostitutes' wombs become addicted to seed, requiring constant deposits or they rot from within. His treatment for this involves inserting wool soaked in vinegar and ground pearls, which at least probably hurts less than the mercury. You notice the inspection process itself spreads more disease than it prevents. Wilhelm uses the same instruments on woman after woman, wiping them clean with a rag that hasn't seen soap this month. His hands move from infected tissue to healthy without washing. The very concept of contagion through contact remains centuries away. When you delicately suggest he might rinse his tools between patients, he laughs. The metal itself purifies through its noble properties. Besides, these women all swim in the same cesspool of sin. The truly heartbreaking part is watching women clearly suffering from conditions unrelated to their profession. Kidney stones, hernias, simple yeast infections, receive the same brutal mercury treatments. Everything becomes the pox in Wilhelm's limited diagnostic vocabulary. One young woman probably has nothing worse than an allergic reaction to the cheap soap brothels use, but she leaves with instructions to fumigate her genitals twice daily until the next inspection. Historians still argue whether these medical interventions did more harm than good. The mercury certainly killed some bacteria, along with healthy tissue, cognitive function, and occasionally the patient. But in an age before antibiotics, even poisonous treatment might have occasionally worked through sheer destructive coincidence, lending credence to methods that belonged in a medieval chamber of horrors rather than a hospital. You escape Wilhelm's chamber of medical horrors, gasping for air that doesn't taste of mercury and misery. But your investigation into the brothel trade's inner workings isn't complete without understanding the clientele. So you position yourself in the Swan's common room on a busy Friday evening, watching the parade of humanity that flows through these doors when darkness provides cover for desire. The first surprise is the sheer ordinariness of it all. These aren't just sailors spending their wages or criminals seeking dark pleasures. The man at the corner table wearing a goldsmith's guild badge nurses his ale while negotiating with a redhead, Two cloth merchants you recognize from the market compare notes on their favorite girls, like they're discussing wine vintages. A clerk, still dusty with ink stains, counts coins carefully, ensuring he has enough for an hour's escape from copying legal documents. The demographics tell their own story. Young apprentices cluster together, pooling their meager coins for a shared visit. Apparently, group rates exist for the budget-conscious. Married men predominate after sunset, their wedding rings catching candlelight as they gesture for more wine. You spot at least 3 men you've seen at Mass at St. Paul's, their pious daytime personas shed like uncomfortable clothes. Then the clergy arrive, and nobody even pretends surprise. A Dominican friar in full habit doesn't bother with discretion, greeting the madam like an old friend. 2 parish priests argue theology while waiting their turn, apparently seeing no contradiction between their afternoon sermons on chastity and their evening activities. The madam mentions that Wednesday afternoons are unofficially clerical hours, when men of the cloth receive a 10% discount, professional courtesy between those who serve different appetites of the soul. The client ledger, which the madam guards carefully, but lets you glimpse for a silver penny, reads like a census of male London. John the baker visits every Saturday for his bad back, the therapeutic benefits of prostitution being widely acknowledged by men who need excuses. Thomas the scrivener has a standing appointment with Margaret of York, who apparently listens patiently to his terrible poetry before earning her fee in other ways. The ledger notes customer preferences with business-like efficiency. Robert Chandler, brunettes only, pays extra for Greek fashion, do not serve strong wine. You're fascinated by the unwritten rules governing these transactions. Regular customers develop oddly domestic relationships with their preferred women. One merchant brings his favorite girl fabric from Flanders. A widower pays simply to talk, holding hands with a woman who reminds him of his late wife. The emotional labor these women provide extends far beyond the physical. They're therapists, confessors, and fantasy fulfillment wrapped in one expensive package. The class dynamics prove particularly intriguing. Wealthy merchants book entire evenings, sometimes multiple girls, turning private chambers into temporary harems. But you also see laborers who've saved for months for a brief escape from grinding poverty. The brothel serves as a great equalizer inside these walls. Money matters more than birth. A duke's bastard serves a tanner who can pay, while merchants' sons wait their turn behind common soldiers flush with campaign spoils. Foreign visitors add another layer to the clientele mix. Italian merchants complain loudly that English prostitutes lack the refinement of Venetian courtesans. German travelers seek girls who speak their language, creating niche markets for multilingual workers. You overhear a Hanseatic trader explaining that London brothels are positively quaint compared to Hamburg's elaborate establishments, though he seems happy enough to partake in local offerings. The payment methods reveal economic creativity. Not everyone has ready coin, so brothels accept payment in kind, cloth, spices, even livestock in rural areas. One regular customer, a jeweler, maintains a running account settled monthly with small pieces of worked silver. The madam shows remarkable flexibility in accepting IOUs from known customers, though interest rates would make modern credit cards look charitable. Most illuminating are the customer complaints, handled with surprising formality. A merchant claims he was overcharged for services not rendered. A young knight insists the wine was watered beyond acceptable limits. The madam mediates these disputes like a guildmaster, offering partial refunds or free return visits to maintain reputation. After all, in a business built on repeat custom and word-of-mouth recommendation, customer satisfaction matters, even when the customers are purchasing satisfaction itself. The Madam's private chamber holds more than ledgers and strongboxes behind a false panel. You discover her real moneymakers, bottles of murky liquid, dried herbs in carefully labeled jars, and strange talismans that supposedly ensure everything from enhanced performance to guaranteed pregnancy, or its prevention. The magical side business of medieval brothels thrives in shadows within shadows, where desperate people seek solutions Christianity can't openly provide. Love filters pay better than love itself, the Madam confides, showing you her collection with entrepreneurial pride. This bottle contains dove's blood mixed with honey and crushed pearls, guaranteed to inflame passion when slipped into wine. That powder, ground from a hanged man's thumb bone, ensures a straying husband returns home. The prices for these concoctions exceed what most workers earn in a month, but desperation opens purses wider than desire ever could. The prostitutes themselves often double as cunning women, their intimate knowledge of human bodies making them natural repositories of folk medicine and darker arts. You meet Isabel, who specializes in women's troubles, a euphemism covering everything from fertility charms to herbal abortifacients. Her knowledge comes from generations of whispered wisdom, each recipe tested on desperate women who had nowhere else to turn. The fertility magic works both ways. Wives of merchants visit secretly, seeking potions to quicken their wombs after years of barren marriage. The ingredients read like a witch's shopping list. Menstrual blood from a woman who's borne 7 sons. Mercury, again with the mercury. Ground mandrake root shaped like a baby, all mixed under a full moon while reciting backwards paternosters. The fact that mercury probably prevents conception rather than encouraging it remains centuries from discovery. More troubling are the abortion attempts. Dangerous procedures wrapped in magical thinking. Isabel shows you pennyroyal, tansy, and rue, herbs that can indeed terminate pregnancy by poisoning the mother just enough to reject the fetus. The dosages are guesswork based on experience and prayer. Too little, nothing happens. Too much, both mother and child die. She mentions other methods too horrible to detail: long needles, violent purgatives, jumping treatments that amount to deliberate trauma. The love magic extends beyond potions to elaborate rituals. A young prostitute named Catherine sells wax figures for curse work, each carefully crafted to resemble the target. Pins through the heart ensure love. Through the head cause forgetfulness of other lovers. Through the genitals, well, results vary depending on intention. She learned the craft from a woman later burned for witchcraft, though Catherine insists she only practices white magic, a distinction that wouldn't save her if the wrong person complained. You're shown the brothel's most guarded secret, a consecrated host, somehow obtained from a corrupt priest, used in the most powerful love spells. The theological implications make your head spin, the body of Christ employed to ensure earthly lust. The women grind tiny fragments into powder, mixing it with menstrual blood and pubic hair from the spell's target. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly believed in such magic's efficacy, or simply needed the psychological comfort of feeling they could control uncontrollable situations. The brothel's magical services extend to protection charms for the working girls themselves. Small lead tablets inscribed with corrupted Latin prayers supposedly prevent pregnancy and disease. Dried roses worn in a pouch between the breasts ward off violent customers. A coal that's never been cold, carried in the left shoe, ensures steady income. The fact that none of these actually work doesn't diminish their psychological value. In a profession where danger lurks in every transaction, even false protection feels better than none. Some clients seek magical services beyond the romantic. A merchant pays for a curse on his competitor, requiring the prostitute's monthly blood to seal the spell. A wife wants her husband made impotent with other women, easily arranged with the right herbs in his wine, though the effect comes from toxins rather than magic. The brothel serves as a clearinghouse for society's darker desires, the wants that can't be spoken in daylight or satisfied by prayer. The intersection of sex work and folk magic creates a peculiar economy, where women banned from legitimate healing roles become society's unofficial wise women. Their knowledge, gained through intimate observation of human nature's darker corners, fills gaps left by official medicine and religion. They treat what physicians won't acknowledge, satisfy needs the church condemns, and provide hope, however false, to the desperate. It's herbalism and psychology wrapped in supernatural trappings, more effective than Wilhelm's mercury, but equally dangerous if discovered by authorities who see Satan's hand in every woman who knows too much. The bell of St. Mary O'Very strikes the 11th hour, and you notice a sudden shift in the brothel's atmosphere. The madam begins herding certain customers toward the door, checking a water clock with unusual anxiety. House rules, she explains tersely. No man may stay past midnight. No woman may refuse a customer able to pay. And God help us all if the bishop's men find anyone breaking curfew. The medieval bureaucracy of sex has schedules as rigid as any monastery. You convince her to explain these strange regulations while the last stragglers depart. The rules, officially called the customs of the stews, read like they were drafted by someone with both obsessive-compulsive disorder and a dark sense of humor. No woman may grab a man by his gown to pull him inside. Solicitation must be verbal only. No husband may sell his wife into prostitution, but fathers may indenture daughters once they reach 14. Customers may not carry weapons larger than an eating knife, leading to fascinating arguments about what constitutes eating knife versus small sword. The temporal restrictions prove particularly bizarre. Brothels must close during all holy days, which in medieval England means roughly a third of the year. They can't open before noon on Sundays, must shut completely during Advent and Lent, and face massive fines for operating during parliamentary sessions. Apparently, England's lawmakers deserve undistracted deliberation. One madam was pilloried for letting customers stay through Easter Vigil, though you suspect her real crime was competing with the bishop's own establishments. Food service comes with its own encyclopedia of regulations. Brothels may serve bread, cheese, and ale, but hot food requires a separate license. No flesh meat on Fridays or fast days, naturally, though fish is acceptable, leading to creative interpretations of what constitutes fish. One establishment was fined for serving eel pie on Friday, the court's ruling that eels were too serpentine to count as proper fish. The metaphysical debates over whether barnacle geese count as fish or fowl apparently extend to brothel kitchens. The rules governing the women themselves read like contracts from hell. They can't refuse any customer who can pay the posted price, regardless of his hygiene, temperament, or anatomical peculiarities. But they also can't accept men known to be lepers. Priests who arrive in clerical dress, civilian clothes are fine, or anyone currently excommunicated. How they're supposed to verify someone standing with the church while negotiating prices remains unclear. Working conditions are strictly regulated, though not in ways that benefit the workers. Women may not sit in windows to attract customers, too inflammatory for public morals. They can't wear their hair loose inside the brothel, too suggestive. Ironically, during their monthly courses, they must hang a red ribbon outside their chamber door, warning customers of their temporary unavailability. The customer may then demand a refund or substitute worker, because apparently medieval contract law extends to the most intimate transactions. The punishment clauses reveal medieval justice's creative sadism. A woman who strikes a customer loses her position and faces public whipping, but a customer who strikes a woman merely pays a fine to the brothel owner, not the victim. Women caught working while diseased face branding on the face, ensuring they never work again. Those who steal from customers get their ears nailed to the pillory before banishment. The law shows remarkable concern for property rights and customer satisfaction, while treating workers as disposable commodities. Financial regulations add another layer of complexity. All prices must be publicly posted and verified by city officials annually. No credit may be extended beyond 1 week. Women cannot inherit property while working as prostitutes, but may bequeath their earnings to anyone except current clients. The theological gymnastics required to deny these women basic property rights while simultaneously taxing their income would impress a Jesuit. You discover one particularly cruel rule. Women may not refuse service based on ethnicity or religion, but Jewish customers must pay double rates, with the excess going to fund Christian charities. Muslim visitors, increasingly rare since the Crusades, face triple rates plus mandatory blessing of their coins by a priest before payment. The brothel thus becomes an instrument of religious taxation, extracting extra pounds of flesh from non-Christian flesh seekers. The time restrictions create their own underground economy. After official closing hours, some establishments transform into private parties, where technically no commercial transaction occurs. Everyone just happens to leave generous gifts. Others maintain secret rooms accessible through neighboring buildings. Operating shadow brothels within brothels are. The bishop's enforcers know about these violations, but turn selectively blind eyes based on a complex calculus of bribes, political connections, and whether they themselves frequent the establishment. The Midsummer Festival arrives like a plague of profitable madness, and you position yourself outside the cardinal's hat to witness medieval hypocrisy in full bloom. The same city that carefully regulates prostitution year-round abandons all pretense when religious holidays provide excuse for excess. Corpus Christi, Michaelmas, St. John's Eve. Each holy celebration becomes the brothel's Black Friday, when normal rules suspend and coin flows like communion wine. You watch pilgrims who've travelled hundreds of miles to venerate Thomas Becket's shrine make distinctly unholy detours through Southwark. Their pilgrim badges mark them as seekers of spiritual redemption, but tonight they seek earthier satisfactions. The brothels have hired extra women, borrowed from establishments as far as Oxford, to handle the crushing demand. Supply and demand economics at their most basic and most base. The carnival atmosphere transforms the entire district. Jugglers and fire-eaters perform between the brothel doors, while merchants sell holy relics that look suspiciously like pig bones and love tokens that are definitely not blessed by any priest. A man dressed as the Pope mock blesses prostitutes who kneel before him in exaggerated parody, while actual clergy in the crowd laugh louder than anyone. The line between sacred festival and profane celebration blurs beyond recognition. Inside the cardinal's hat, the normal price list has been replaced with festival rates, triple the usual charges, but customers pay without complaint. The main hall resembles a bacchanal painted by a particularly debauched artist, or musicians play increasingly bawdy songs while acrobats perform acts that would make a contortionist blush. The wine flows freely, watered less than usual because profit margins can handle the extra expense when demand soars like this. You spot a group of guildmasters who've clearly made this their annual tradition. They've rented the entire upper floor, importing specific women they request by name, celebrities in their specialized field. The Fishmongers Guild apparently has a standing arrangement involving costumes you'd rather not contemplate. The brewers bring their own ale, superior to the house swill, sharing it with their chosen companions in a weirdly domestic scene amid the debauchery. The festival economy extends beyond the brothels themselves. Street vendors sell herbs guaranteed to enhance virility, mainly parsley and ground antler that might boost confidence if not performance. Pickpockets work the crowds of distracted men, while cutpurses target those too drunk to notice their lightened loads. One enterprising woman sells discretion veils to married men worried about recognition, though the veils fool nobody and probably mark wearers as exactly what they're trying to hide. Religious processions pass directly by the brothel district, creating surreal juxtapositions. Priests carrying holy relics march past windows where half-naked women wave and blow kisses. The contradiction doesn't disturb anyone. This is carnival logic, where normal rules invert and sacred mingles with profane. Some historians still argue whether these festivals served as social safety valves, letting communities blow off steam before returning to rigid normalcy, or whether they revealed the hypocrisy underlying medieval society's entire moral structure. The working women themselves approach festivals with military precision. They prepare special costumes, a nun's habit with strategic tears, angel wings with very earthly modifications, even Virgin Mary blue that would horrify the actual Virgin. They stock up on preventative remedies, knowing the sheer volume of customers increases every health risk. Some hire personal guards, because festival crowds breed violence like summer breeds flies. Market day convergences create perfect storms of commerce and carnality. When the Midsummer Festival coincides with Smithfield Horse Fair, the brothels can barely contain the crowds. Merchants flush with successful sales. Farmers who've sold their harvest. Tinkers and travellers and traders all converge on Southwark's establishments. The madams coordinate like generals, staggering shift changes and rotating workers to prevent complete exhaustion. You witness the Festival of Fools in full swing, where social order officially inverts and a boy bishop rules the day. The real Bishop of Winchester presumably counts his brothel receipts, while his mock replacement tours the stews, blessing the workers with a wooden staff topped with bells. The prostitutes crown their own Queen of Fools, usually the oldest working woman, who presides over festivities with bawdy wisdom and surprisingly touching maternal care for younger workers. By dawn, the district looks like a battlefield where Bacchus defeated all comers. Men sleep in gutters, too drunk or spent to find their way home. The brothels count their profits, more in one night than some establishments see in a month. Workers nurse sore bodies and count their coins, knowing they've earned every penny. Tomorrow brings hangovers and shame and return to regulated normalcy. But tonight the medieval world admitted what it usually denies. Saints and sinners shop at the same markets, just usually not so openly. Dawn breaks grey and unforgiving over Southwark, illuminating a scene that would make Dante add another circle to his Inferno. You follow the city watch as they make their rounds, collecting the human wreckage of last night's festivities and, more importantly, arresting any prostitute who dared work outside the official system. The punishment parade begins, and medieval justice shows its talent for creative cruelty. The first woman dragged before the makeshift court worked independently from a tavern, avoiding brothel fees and bishop's taxes. Her crime technically reads as practicing whoredom without license, but her real offence was economic, depriving both church and crown of revenue. The sentence comes swift. 3 dunkings in the Thames at its filthiest point, where the Fleet River empties London sewage into the larger stream. You watch her emerge gasping from the brown water, retching and shivering, while officials lecture about the wages of unsanctioned sin. The cucking stool, that medieval innovation in misogynistic punishment, sees heavy use today. Women convicted of being common scolds, which apparently includes any prostitute who argued about payment, get strapped into the chair and dunked repeatedly. The crowd treats it as entertainment, placing bets on how long each woman can hold her breath. One nearly drowns when the rope mechanism jams, but the operator simply shrugs and blames God's judgment rather than mechanical failure. Public whipping draws the largest crowds. A woman caught soliciting in a respectable neighborhood bends over the punishment frame while a professional flogger demonstrates his art. The law specifies 40 stripes save 1, but the counter seems suspiciously flexible. Blood runs down her back as the crowd jeers, though you notice some men avert their eyes, perhaps recognizing a face they've seen in more pleasant circumstances. The pillory serves for property crimes, and prostitutes fill half the stations. One stole a customer's purse. She claims he refused payment. He insists she took extra, without witnesses. Her word means nothing against the guild members. Another replaced good wine with vinegar after her client passed out drunk. A third kept the clothes a customer removed, selling them to a rag merchant. Each stands locked in wood frames while citizens pelt them with rotting vegetables and worse substances you'd rather not identify. Cart-tailing, reserved for repeat offenders, provides mobile entertainment. The condemned woman, stripped to her shift, gets tied to a cart's tail and dragged through the streets while drummers announce her crimes. The route deliberately passes through market squares and past churches, maximizing exposure and humiliation. One woman endures this for the 3rd time. After this, it's banishment or branding, depending on the magistrate's breakfast digestion. The brandings happen monthly, timed for market days to ensure maximum witnesses. Women who worked while knowingly diseased receive the letter H for harlot on their forehead, destroying any chance of future anonymity. The iron heats over coals while the condemned woman watches, knowing her life as she knew it ends with that searing touch. Some faint before the iron meets flesh. Others scream prayers, promises, pleas that move nobody with power to intervene. You witness stranger punishments born from medieval creativity. A woman who dressed above her station must wear her illegal finery while sitting backward on a donkey, paraded through streets where people throw mud at silk that will never clean properly. Another who worked during Lent carries a massive wooden cross through the city, stopping at each church to beg forgiveness from priests who know her profession well, some intimately. The discrimination in punishment follows predictable patterns. Young, beautiful women who might yet attract protective patrons receive lighter sentences, fines rather than flogging, single dunkings instead of repeated ones. Older workers, especially those showing signs of disease or drink, face the harshest penalties. Foreign prostitutes get expelled after punishment, shipped back to France or Flanders with branded faces ensuring they can't simply return under new names. Some punishments contain twisted moral lessons. Women caught with married clients must stand in the market wearing signs detailing not their own sins, but their clients' names and infidelities. Though curiously, the men face no punishment themselves. Those who corrupted youth, defined as anyone under 16, though you've seen younger workers in the brothels, get their heads shaved before other punishments, because apparently baldness adds moral weight to whipping. The authorities sometimes offer alternatives that reveal the system's true purpose. Pay a massive fine, and the whipping becomes symbolic. 3 light strokes that barely redden skin. Provide information about unlicensed competitors, and your own infractions might disappear from court records. Agree to work in the bishop's establishments instead of independently, and suddenly your crime transforms from moral outrage to minor administrative violation. The punishment parade serves less as moral correction than economic enforcement, ensuring the proper people profit from improper activities. Behind the swan's facade, through a door marked only by a carved rose turned upside down, you discover medieval society's most hidden secret, the world of male prostitutes. The madam here, a sharp-eyed woman named Agnes, runs what she calls a private club for discerning gentlemen, though everyone knows exactly what kind of discernment her establishment serves. The legal fictions pile even deeper here. Officially, these young men are servants, musicians, or bath attendants. You're surprised by the openness once inside. Men in various states of undress lounge on cushions, some reading, others playing chess, creating an atmosphere more like a Roman bath than a brothel. The clientele includes names that would shake London's power structure. A prominent alderman negotiates with a youth who can't be older than 16, while a cathedral canon examines the wine selection with suspicious familiarity. The economics differ drastically from female prostitution. These men command higher prices, partly due to greater legal risk, partly because their clients often wield real power. A night with one of Agnes's special servants costs more than most craftsmen earn in a month. The workers themselves come from surprising backgrounds: impoverished nobles' sons, discharged soldiers, actors between companies, even a few former monastery students who found religious life incompatible with their natures. The bishop knows, of course, Agnes confides, counting tonight's substantial receipts. But he finds it harder to justify collecting rent from this particular sin, so we pay our dues through creative channels. Those channels include hefty donations to church building funds, payments disguised as property taxes, and occasional free services for clergy who swing both ways on their theological pendulum. The legal situation remains deliberately murky. Sodomy technically merits death by burning, but prosecution requires witnesses to the actual act, not just its negotiation or aftermath. This creates an entire vocabulary of euphemism. Men don't hire male prostitutes. They employ private secretaries with very specific skills. The service isn't sex, but Italian conversation or Greek instruction, terms that fool nobody but provide crucial legal cover. You meet Marcus, a former soldier who discovered his battle scars attracted certain clients. He explains the underground's rigid hierarchies. Tops command more money than bottoms. Younger men out-earn older ones, and those who can credibly pass as straight in public become especially valuable. Some clients specifically request men who don't seem queer, wanting the thrill of corrupting perceived masculinity. The health risks multiply in this shadow world. Without even the dubious protection of official medical inspections, disease spreads unchecked. Agnes maintains her own medical advisor, a disgraced physician who lost his license for unnatural interests, but knows more about treating anal injuries than most surgeons. His remedies include oak gall suppositories and mercury rinses that probably cause more damage than they prevent. The clientele spans every social rank. Though servants and labourers find the prices prohibitive, merchants visiting from countries with harsher enforcement become regular customers, as do married men whose wives would never suspect their husband's interests run in different directions. One elderly client pays simply to sleep beside a young man who reminds him of a lost love, a soldier who died in the French wars 20 years ago. Blackmail haunts every transaction. Some workers keep detailed records of their clients, insurance against arrest or violence. Others have protectors who ensure both payment and silence, muscled men who lurk in corners, ready to intervene if negotiations turn ugly or clients attempt to leave without paying. The threat works both ways. Clients sometimes threaten exposure unless prices drop or services expand. The code phrases and signals create an entire secret language. A man wearing a green carnation knows what he's advertising. Asking for Christopher's recommendation at certain taverns leads to discreet introductions. Even the brothel's location, down an alley behind a Catholic church, provides ironic cover. Men can claim they were visiting for confession if spotted in the area. You witness the strange domesticity some clients seek. One wealthy merchant has maintained the same servant for 5 years, setting him up in private lodgings, paying for clothes and education. It's marriage in all but name and law, though both parties maintain elaborate public fictions about master and servant. Another client brings home-cooked meals, dining with his chosen companion before retiring to private chambers, seeking not just sex but the intimacy forbidden by social structures. The male prostitutes face unique vulnerabilities. Without even the questionable protection of being Winchester geese, they operate entirely outside legal frameworks. Violence against them goes unpunished. Who would dare report it? When one young man disappears, Agnes simply sighs and recruits another. The Thames holds many secrets, and some of them once worked in rooms above taverns, servicing needs that officially don't exist. The crying reaches you before you round the corner, not the wails of a customer's bastard, but something more primal. Behind the cardinal's hat, in what they call the weaning house, you discover medieval prostitution's harshest reality, the children. Margaret, the wet nurse, tends to 6 infants while discussing rates with a young prostitute whose belly still shows the slack of recent childbirth. 3 shillings monthly if you visit, 5 if you don't. Margaret states flatly, most choose not to visit. The economics of pregnancy in the sex trade create impossible choices. A pregnant prostitute can work perhaps 5 months before showing too much for customer comfort. Some establishments cater to men with specific tastes, but most women face months without income just when expenses soar. The lucky ones have regular clients who pay support. The rest borrow against future earnings, entering debt spirals that ensure they'll work until age or disease makes them unmarketable. You learn the grim statistics from Margaret, who's been running this informal nursery for 15 years. Maybe 1 in 3 infants survives their first year. Syphilis passes from mother to child, causing blindness, deformity, death. Poverty means watered-down milk when mothers can't nurse. The overlaying deaths, infants smothered by sleeping caregivers, happen with suspicious frequency when payments fall behind. Margaret doesn't explicitly murder children, but neither does she try too hard to save those whose mothers can't pay. The surviving children face predictable futures. Boys might find apprenticeships if they're lucky and show no obvious signs of their parentage. Ship captains and military recruiters ask few questions about origins. The unlucky ones become pickpockets, beggars, or follow darker paths. Girls' destinies are written before birth. By 12 or 13, they'll work the same rooms where they were conceived, the cycle spinning endlessly forward. Some mothers attempt desperate escapes from this fate. You meet Alice, who saved for 3 years to buy her daughter an apprenticeship with a seamstress, complete with forged documents claiming respectable parentage. The plan collapsed when a client recognized the child's features, his own, reflected back. He withdrew his wife's dress orders from the seamstress, destroying her business unless she expelled the girl. Alice's daughter now works beside her mother, both pretending not to notice the family resemblance. The brothel's approach to contraception reveals medieval medicine at its most creative and least effective. Women insert wool soaked in honey and cedar oil, believing sweetness repels male seed. Others use half a lemon as a cervical cap, the acid perhaps providing marginal protection. Rue and pennyroyal tea, drunk daily, might prevent implantation, but also causes liver damage that kills slowly. The most desperate resort to lead suppositories, trading potential pregnancy for certain poisoning. When prevention fails, the remedies grow darker. You watch a woman called Old Joan prepare her monthly restoration potion, ergot-infected rye, tansy, and substances she won't name, boiled until the smell makes your eyes water. Sometimes it works, expelling the pregnancy along with dangerous amounts of blood. Sometimes it fails, leaving women pregnant and poisoned. Sometimes it works too well, and Margaret gains another small body to dispose of discreetly. The emotional toll shows in unexpected ways. Women develop elaborate rituals around their lost children, keeping locks of hair, naming babies who lived only hours, visiting unmarked graves in unconsecrated ground where unbaptized infants lie. One prostitute shows you a collection of small wooden dolls, one for each pregnancy lost. She dresses them, talks to them, creates the motherhood denied her by circumstance and economics. The rare success stories become legends sustaining false hope. Everyone knows about Eleanor, whose merchant lover acknowledged their son and paid for education at Cambridge. The boy became a respected physician, never acknowledging his mother, but secretly paying for her retirement. Or Catherine's daughter, who married a minor knight, who either didn't know or didn't care about her origins. These exceptions prove the rule. Thousands of children born into shadow lives, marked by their mother's profession before drawing their first breath. The Church's response mixes charity with condemnation. Foundling hospitals accept some prostitutes' children, but mark them with specific badges, ensuring everyone knows their shameful origins are. Magdalene convents offer refuge to reformed prostitutes and their daughters, but the price includes lifelong penance and separation from any sons. Christian mercy extends only so far when dealing with those conceived in commercial sin. You leave the weaning house feeling hollowed out. Margaret calls after you, mentioning she also sells abortifacients and baby farming services for respectable women with inconvenient pregnancies. The moral lines blur beyond recognition. Prostitutes' children die of neglect, while merchants' bastards get farmed out to the same wet nurses. Money launders more than just coins in medieval London's shadow economy, where childhood itself becomes a commodity traded by those with few other options. The year 1495 arrives like an apocalypse in miniature, and you watch medieval prostitution transform overnight as the Great Pox spreads through Europe's brothels with terrifying efficiency. What later centuries will call syphilis appears first in Naples, carried by French soldiers, who blame it on Italians, who blame it on the Spanish, who blame it on natives of the New World. The blame matters less than the horrifying symptoms that turn the human body into a battlefield of suppurating sores and rotting flesh. You stand in St. Thomas's Hospital, where the usual monthly inspections have become daily horror shows. Women arrive with the characteristic chancres, but it's the secondary symptoms that truly terrify. Rashes that cover the entire body, hair falling out in clumps, bones that ache as if crushed from within. Master Wilhelm, the examining surgeon, has abandoned his mercury fumigations for even more desperate measures, cauterizing sores with hot irons, prescribing starvation diets to cool the corrupted humors, even drilling holes in skulls to release poxed vapors. The disease's progression defies medieval medical understanding. Unlike other poxes that kill quickly or leave survivors immune, this one plays a long game. Women seem to recover, return to work, then develop new symptoms months later. Gummers that eat through flesh, madness as the disease reaches the brain, babies born with saddle noses and peg teeth. The brothels empty as terrified customers flee and workers die or become too disfigured to attract any but the most desperate clients. Economic panic grips the sex trade. The Bishop of Winchester sees his brothel rents plummet as establishments close faster than plague houses. The Cardinal's hat, once Southwark's jewel, operates at quarter capacity. Madams who spent decades building their businesses watch everything crumble as fear spreads faster than the disease itself. Some try to hide infected workers, painting over sores with white lead, but customers have learned to demand inspections in bright daylight. The medical establishment's response reveals both innovation and ignorance. Some physicians advocate complete abstinence, revolutionary advice in an era that considered regular sexual release necessary for health. Others promote increasingly bizarre cures, virgin boy's urine as a wash, ground unicorn horn, actually narwhal tusk, mixed with holy water, even transplanting diseased flesh to trees in hopes the pox would transfer to the bark. Historians still argue whether any of these treatments accidentally worked through placebo effect, or if they all equally hasten death. New regulations multiply like the disease itself. Infected prostitutes face immediate banishment, though most have nowhere to go but the streets. Some cities mandate that all sex workers wear bells like lepers, warning of their approach. Others require weekly inspections documented in triplicate, creating a bureaucracy of disease that enriches clerks while doing nothing to stop transmission. The Bishop of Winchester issues edicts requiring 40 days of prayer and fasting for infected workers, as if starvation might succeed where medicine failed. You witness the rise of new establishments catering to paranoid clients. Virgin houses promise only untouched girls, though everyone knows virginity can be counterfeited with alum and pigeon blood. Some brothels advertise workers who've survived the pox and claim immunity, a desperate gamble based on confusing syphilis with other diseases. The most exclusive establishments require medical certificates from both workers and clients. creating a black market in forged health documents. The social fabric tears as the disease spreads beyond brothels. Respectable wives develop symptoms, forcing acknowledgement of husbands' activities. Children born with congenital syphilis challenge the myth that only sinners suffer. Priests who caught the disease ministering to fallen women spread it to other parishes. The pox becomes democracy's darkest gift, affecting all classes equally, though only the poor face punishment for contracting it. Alternative treatments proliferate as official medicine fails. You visit a woman called Dutch Mary who sells pox cakes, mercury mixed with lard and herbs, spread on bread. The treatment causes teeth to fall out and personalities to change as mercury poisoning mimics madness. But some patients prefer these symptoms to the disease's visible ravages. Others try salvation through sweat, sitting in sealed rooms heated beyond endurance, hoping to literally cook out the corruption. The psychological impact proves as devastating as physical symptoms. Workers who once took pride in their beauty watch themselves transform into monsters. Regular clients abandon women they visited for years, switching allegiances to anyone showing clear skin. The sisterhood among prostitutes fractures as healthy workers shun infected ones. Fearing contamination, some infected women deliberately spread the disease, reasoning that if they must suffer, so should the men who likely infected them. By 1497, the Great Pox has reshaped prostitution across Europe. Prices triple for certified clean workers. Brothels invest in bright lights and white sheets to display unblemished skin. The casual intimacy that once characterized the trade, sharing cups, casual kisses, the human warmth beyond mere transaction, vanishes behind walls of fear. The medieval world's carefully regulated vice industry will never recover its strange respectability. The pox marks not just bodies, but the beginning of the end for publicly sanctioned prostitution, driving the trade underground, where it will remain for centuries. The hammer falls on All Saints' Day, 1546. You stand among the crowd as King Henry VIII's proclamation rings through Southwark. All brothels must close immediately, their workers dispersed, their buildings converted to respectable use. The Reformation has come for the Winchester geese, and centuries of regulated vice end not with the Great Pox's whimper, but Reformation's bang. The Bishop of Winchester, stripped of his brothel empire, watches stone-faced as royal commissioners nail closure notices to doors that welcomed half of London. The economic disruption ripples outward like plague. Thousands of women lose their livelihoods overnight. Not just prostitutes, but laundresses, cooks, musicians, servants, the entire ecosystem that surrounded the sex trade. The bankside landlords who grew rich on bishops' rents face bankruptcy. Taverns that relied on brothel overflow see their custom vanish. Even the watermen who ferried customers across the Thames find their income halved. Reform, it seems, has a price nobody calculated. You watch former prostitutes gather outside St. Saviour's Church, hoping for charity that won't come. The Reformation preaches salvation through faith alone, but apparently faith doesn't include feeding former sex workers. Some lucky few with families slink back to villages that may or may not accept them. Others reinvent themselves as seamstresses, washerwomen, servants, any trade that provides bread without questions about past employment. The unlucky majority face starvation or the same work, now illegal and far more dangerous. The Magdalene convents, those medieval refuges for reformed prostitutes, themselves face dissolution. You visit St. Mary Magdalene Whitechapel days before its closure, finding 200 women about to be thrown onto streets with no skills beyond prayer and penance. The Mother Superior, a former brothel owner who found God after the Great Pox claimed her beauty, weeps as she distributes the convent's last coins. "We save souls," she says, "but bodies need bread, and the king's commissioners care nothing for either." Underground prostitution blooms immediately in Reformation's shadow. The same women work the same streets, but now without regulation, protection, or medical inspection. Taverns develop secret rooms, supposedly for storage but furnished with suspicious comfort. Private homes become temporary brothels, operating until neighbors complain, then moving like criminal roadshows. The careful medieval balance between vice and control collapses into chaos that benefits nobody except the most violent exploiters. The authorities' response varies between vindictive enforcement and profitable blindness. Some aldermen, their own entertainment venues closed, pursue illegal prostitution with zealous fury. Others discover that bribes from underground operations exceed what they previously collected in legal taxes. The City of London officially celebrates the closing of Southwark's sins, while its own illegal brothels multiply like mushrooms after rain. Hypocrisy finds new forms in Reformation's light. You meet Eleanor, formerly of the Swan, now working from a room above a Pudding Lane bakery. She laughs bitterly at Reformation's promises. They said closing the stews would end vice and disease. Instead, we work in fear, pay more to protect us, see no physicians, and gentlemen still knock at midnight. Only now the bishop gets no rent, the king no tax, and we get no protection. Progress, they call it. The diaspora of London's sex workers spreads prostitution to previously untouched areas. Small market towns suddenly deal with arrivals of mysteriously skilled widows seeking lodging. Port cities see influxes of women with London accents and specific talents. Some travel as far as Amsterdam or Hamburg, where regulated prostitution continues. Others join travelling fairs, military camps, or anywhere crowds of men gather with coins to spend. Religious reformers declare victory while willfully blind to reality's persistence. Pamphlets celebrate the closing of Satan's synagogues, while their authors frequent the same women in new locations. Protestant ministers preach against Catholic corruption in managing brothels, while their own congregants organize private establishments. The rhetoric of reform covers the same old activities with new theological justifications. The human cost accumulates in ways nobody tracks. Former prostitutes found working illegally face branding, whipping, even hanging for repeat offences. Children previously supported by regulated brothel work starve or turn to crime. Disease spreads faster without even medieval medicine's dubious inspections. Violence against sex workers explodes without official protection. The Reformation transforms regulated vice into unregulated misery. As you walk through Southwark's transformed landscape, former brothels become tenements, warehouses, even churches. The Cardinal's Hat houses 3 families per room. The Swan stores cloth. The Rose stands empty. Too notorious for respectable use but too valuable to demolish. Physical traces vanish but memories linger. Everyone knows what these buildings were, what happened in rooms now echoing with different sounds. The medieval experiment in regulated prostitution ends not through moral evolution, but political calculation. Henry VIII needed Protestant credentials and church property more than brothel taxes. The women who served London's needs for centuries become Reformation's collateral damage, their livelihood sacrificed to theological fashion. Vice continues. Of course, it always does. But now it wears Reformation's mask of denial, rather than medieval regulation's honest face. And so, as the last lights of the old brothels fade into history's shadows, you find yourself drifting back through the centuries, leaving behind those narrow medieval streets where desire and commerce dance their ancient dance. The sounds grow softer now, the calling voices of the Winchester geese becoming whispers, then echoes, then silence. You've witnessed the whole strange story. The bishops who collected rent on sin, the yellow-haired women marking themselves for survival, the bathhouses that were never quite what they seemed. You've seen the festivals where rules dissolved like morning mist, the children born into shadow worlds, and finally, the Reformation that swept it all away, not ending the world's oldest profession, but merely driving it deeper underground. The medieval world, for all its harsh realities, at least looked at human nature with clear, calculating eyes. Perhaps there's something to be said for honesty, even when that honesty involves regulated vice and episcopal rent collection. Your breathing slows now, matching the rhythm of deep sleep approaching. The last image fading from your mind's eye is of a woman in a striped hood, walking through London streets with her head held high, making her living in the only way her world allowed. Rest now. Let the medieval world, with all its contradictions, slip away like a dream upon waking. The story is told, the night is deep, and tomorrow's light will find you far from those ancient streets where bishops and brothels once shared the same clouded breath. Sleep comes softly, carrying you home.